It is Friday afternoon, not Friday evening. Usually we do this a little bit later, leading to the rumor that Will Allred and Kevin Joseph are vampires. I can prove with the Florida sunshine that I am not a vampire, but Will is down, I think, in a basement with no windows. So I think the jury is still out on you.
Okay, we'll work on that next week.
I've never seen Will in the daylight, so we will see about that. But this is more important. Usually we try to get about 4 projects on Explain Yourself so that everybody gets a chance to really talk about each of the projects with time. Well, JM DeMatteis and David Welsby of Spellbound Comics they found the code. Just put out 4 projects at once, and we're just going to talk to you and only you.
The code to getting a dedicated
hour
with
say, yeah.
It was perfect. We were like, we like to get four in, and we're gonna knock it out with one project. We have Shawnee Myers in the chat. Shawnee, I was so worried it might be too early for you. So great to see you, and we've got a lot to talk about. Normally what we do is we ask for like a 30-second elevator pitch so that if someone was walking past you at a convention, how would you get their attention on the book? This is a slightly different project. As I kind of teased, there are 4 different books. So JM or David, who would like to give the kind of the macro about what this Kickstarter project, and I know that you can get it on Kickstarter and somewhere else. So who wants to lead us into the DeMultiverse?
JM, do you have a preference?
Start, and David, just feel free to jump in whenever I blunder and say something that's incorrect. Do you want to know the backstory, or you just want to dive into the books?
Let's do the backstory. Let's start at the beginning.
So I met David, what is it, 1.5 years ago, 2 years ago, David, something like that. I do an occasional writing workshop called Imagination 101. And when the pandemic hit, I took it online for the first time. And I think David was in the first online class I ever did. And as a result of the class, we got friendly, we got to talking. David has 20 years of experience as a TV writer and a producer, and we connected sort of creatively and on other levels. And we just got to talking about what I'm up to, what he's up to. And one of the things that I'm always looking for is for new venues for my creator-owned work. I've been doing creator-owned work since, I guess the first thing I ever did was Moonshadow back in the 80s. And I've always tried to balance my work for Marvel, DC, and those companies, and whatever work I may be doing in TV or whatever, with stuff that's really personal and really mine. And you're always looking for the new venue for that. And I've been intrigued by Kickstarter for years, because to me, it seems like that takes away one more wall between you and the audience. You're not funneling through some publisher who's in for 50% and may not even be promoting your book or whatever the deal may be. But the thing that always held me back was it just seemed like a hell of a lot of work that I was not honestly willing to do. I just don't have the nervous system for it, as I'm discovering. And David and I got to talking, and he basically said, well, I'd love to do a Kickstarter for you. And we got to bouncing, what ideas do you have? And well, I've been doing this for 180 years. I've got a lot of ideas, but I pitched him like 4 different ideas. And he brilliantly said to me, because David is brilliant, I have to say, why don't we do all 4? And I was like, and what the idea that evolved was essentially, do 4 pilots, 4 first issues of these series that I've been, in one way, shape, or form, all of these stories have been with me for years. One of them going back almost like 18 years. I think the newest one maybe 10 years ago. But, you get these ideas, you start to work on them, you put them away, they go away for a couple of years, you take them out, you work on them some more, you pitch them, you can't quite get it out there, you take it back. Mm-hmm. I've had projects that have, seen print 25 years after I first started pitching them, Wow. It's just the nature of it. And sometimes, you come up with an idea in the morning, you pitch it in the afternoon, and it's sold. You just never know. I always say that stories have timing of their own, lives and timing of their own. And as much as it frustrates us, we have to trust the timing. So we got to talking about this, and we developed this concept that we're going to do these 4 first issues. Around that, and David, you can get into this more, grew this Spellbound Comics idea to have an imprint to carry these forward, and got in touch with some wonderful artists whose work I love, some of whom I guess I've worked with all of them in one way, shape, or form. but never, aside from Sean, I don't think ever at this depth as we're going now. So it just all kind of came together in this. Really, to me, it was magical because, like I said, without David, I never would have done this. And he kind of dropped out of the sky, in a halo, with a halo and with wings, and kind of came down and said, "Let me do this." And this magical thing happened. So, and I'm only half joking because I really do think about David that way. And it's been quite an interesting ride. That's all I can say.
I have a slightly different perspective, not on the angel part, but on the story that got us here. The pandemic for me led to me reading more comic books than I had read since I was a teenager, just to escape what I will call the awful reality of life. And it was really fun and enjoyable, and it awakened within me an unfulfilled dream of publishing comic books. As JM mentioned earlier, I spent about 20 years writing full-time in Hollywood on TV shows, film. I've sold a couple comics. And I had moved away from Hollywood 4 years ago now. And I was in Charlotte, and I was just finding that life was a little, what I like to say, boring. And I realized that I needed to scratch the creative itch. And that was what was missing from my life, that now that I had sort of redirected my attention. And that's actually what led to me taking the class with JM. It was more like the pandemic, there's not much you can do. I can sit at home and do this thing and it'll be fun. And I had actually seen JM on the Baltimore Comic-Con, was done online that year. And he was with Kevin McGuire doing a Justice League International panel. And he was extremely entertaining to listen to. And I told him this when I took the class. I was like, when I saw you do that, I just thought, wow, well, you were really interesting to listen to. So let's do another 2 full weekends of it.
Right.
But anyway, back to the reading the comics, it awakened the dream of wanting to publish. And so when Jan was saying he was out there pitching these ideas, I said, well, I've been wanting to publish. What if we came together and did this? And I believe that crowdfunded comics are the future. I don't know if it's 5 years away, maybe 10. But you see that they've already found some footing, and you see a lot of bigger name people doing that now. But I just think what hasn't happened is the audience hasn't grown to the levels of your local comic store. Like we're on pace right now, maybe we'll get 1,000 backers. I've seen some comic campaigns get 2,000. Most comics that go through Diamond are getting 5,000. Sometimes 100,000, the sponsor, whatever. But in order, the costs are still the same. Making a comic book with professionals like them, you have to amortize them over less issues, so the price point becomes higher. So I think the turnoff on Kickstarter, if there is one, is that wait, I have to spend $15 for a single issue comic. I go to my comic store and it's $6. Well, that's going to change once we can build up an audience on Kickstarter and we can sell 2, 3, 5,000 copies of the same thing. We'll still make the same total money, but we'll get an audience that's bigger and everyone will pay what they want to pay. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And actually, we were just discussing this, I think on last week's show, is that, in the direct market, a first issue is, it sells big, and then you get the drop off, for subsequent issues. Kickstarter is almost exactly the reverse of that.
You're right.
The first issues are low, and then as you come back with the second issue, you build your audience, and it just starts stair-stepping from there. It's really kind of weird, actually.
I think the reason for that is because you have more product to sell. So when you come out with issue 2, you're grabbing people who are buying issue 1 for the first time, and when you're on issue 5, they're buying 1, 2, 3, 4, and so it's just more and more of your product is being sold. The problem is you have to get there. Right. So we have to be at a certain number here to do our first one. And then that will justify being able to move on. And so far we're in good shape. So,
well, let's look at the Kickstarter page and actually go through, now that we have it, let's go through the 4 pilots that you're actually putting out with this. I will share the page. And then as we go to each project, I'd love to hear about the art team and how you guys brought the team together for each particular thing, except that I cannot share. That is not on my thing anymore.
It says present down there, Kevin.
They literally changed it to present. Yeah. Sorry about that. That is insane that they did that.
And I only say that because I did the same thing last week. I'm like, crap, I can't share.
That is really crazy. Sorry about that. All right, so
you're on the Kickstarter page?
Yes, sir.
There we go.
Oh, there you go. There we go. There we go.
Sure is
So who's
pretty.
that guy in the middle? Wait. I have to do this.
That's true. First, this is breaking. First time we've had JM imitate the
That's
imitate.
it's the first time I've become a living cartoon.
We like to have exclusives on our show, so we really appreciate it. So I noticed on the Spellbound page you talked about Any Man as kind of being the chaser to the people who come from JM's DC and Marvel work. So what is the concept behind Any Man and the team that you're working with? So
Any Man, on the surface at least, seems like the most sort of traditional superhero story. I'll give you the quick premise. It's 1969. We're in Times Square. A portal opens, and this being, who you see there, comes flying through the portal, claims to be a survivor of a civilization millions of years in the past, an Atlantis kind of civilization, not Atlantis. A perfect world where their arrogance outgrew their morality, and the whole civilization kind of came crashing down on them. And he has now come into the future, to 1969, to what is a crisis point for our modern civilization, to help us avoid the fate that his people went through. Over the next 50 years, and it's a big story, it takes place over the course from 1969 through 2019, and there's a lot going on. He becomes this global hero, the one across the world, and in every nation of the world, in every culture, everyone looks up to him. There's only one problem, and the problem is that everything that we know about him is a complete fabrication. It's a total lie. So there's something hidden beneath the surface that I don't want to tell you here. But the question is, who is he? That is, what's the real agenda? Who created him? What's going on here? And that's the mystery behind Any Man. It seems like he's a traditional superhero, and there's something very, very different going on. And then beneath that mystery, there's something else going on that I think is even more shocking.
Oh,
and it's being drawn by David Baldion. Now, David and I worked together last year on Ben Reilly's Spider-Man for Marvel. And as I keep saying, and I hope David doesn't feel bad, I'd never heard of him before we did this series. But in the course of 5 issues, I went from not knowing who this guy was to being his biggest fan, because he's just a sensational artist. He does the big action beats. He can do like a villain dropping a building on a good guy's head like nobody's business. But he can also do those amazing, intimate, quiet moments where you really need to put a spear through someone's heart. He's just very, very gifted. And I was delighted when I asked him, and he agreed to come and do this with us. And he's done, however great the Ben Reilly stuff was, and it was, this is even better. This is really, really beautiful work.
And by the way, no relation.
Right. And I, my wife gets so confused. First of all, I know a lot of guys named David, so she never knows which David I'm talking about. Then when I start talking about David Baldion, she's just like, yes, please, just who is that? Which one is which?
I actually thought you were drawing it. You just forgot to finish your name. I
wish I could draw like David Baldion.
Is he coloring it as well, or do you have a colorist on this?
We have a colorist.
This is my artwork.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, we had to hire David Baldion.
Tell us about our colorist, David.
On this book, it's Arthur Hesley. He's also doing Layla. He's a younger colorist. He's done some work for Dynamite and some other publishers. He's based out of South America, so some of his work has been there. And we connected to him through Brian Cunningham, and Arthur has been an absolute godsend.
Unbelievable.
Really talented artist, very pleasant to work with, and really, wants it to be a good job, and that's important to him. And just, it's been really, I would say, stressless. Would you?
Yeah. And he's doing gorgeous work. I always say that with a comic book, yes, I'm creating an idea, and the artist is bringing it to visual life and telling the story visually. But if you don't have every piece of the puzzle in place, if you don't have the right colorist, if you don't have the right letterer, any of those elements, if they're out of balance, can take the whole story down. And we are very lucky that we've had great elements on each of these books.
And you mentioned letterers. We try to make sure they get their time in the spotlight, because a lot of people forget. Who is lettering?
As for me as a writer, Taylor Esposito, who has worked,
with me
at DC and many other places. And for me as a writer who's been doing this, working in comics for so many years, when you're reading a comic, you don't think about it. You're not supposed to think about the lettering. But for me, the lettering is the delivery system for my story. And if that lettering does not flow, if it's not artful, I'm very visual, and the lettering enters your brain a certain way, and I've seen it. If the lettering is off, it's not going into your brain the right way. You're not absorbing the story the right way. So I've seen the wrong lettering can pull an entire story down, and the right lettering can actually make me look better than I am. So I always want to work with a good letterer. and Taylor is just magnificent. He's just, the stuff is smooth, it's artistic, it meets all the needs of the story. It's I've been delighted with everything he's done.
Two things to add on lettering.
Yeah.
One, Taylor just like 2 weeks ago won the Tripwire Letterer of the Year award for.
Oh, congratulations!
I believe. So yeah, we have potentially the best letterer in the business right now doing 3 more books. Matthew Dow Smith is doing Godsend himself, but and he's doing a good job also. For Taylor, this is like an artistic showcase also, because he's getting 3 different books with 3 different genres and 3 different styles and trying to make everything feel different as if someone else did it. It's really
nice,
a cool project for everyone involved. I feel like artistic.
It really is, and consistently, everybody who's worked with Taylor has brought nothing but compliments. He does a great job for everybody who works for him. That's pretty cool to hear that somebody is so consistently good at what they do. So before we leave Any Man, if this is the series that's picked up to go first, how long is it envisioned to run?
Well, here's the thing. This will definitely, in my head, is a 5-issue miniseries, which will tell a complete story, but it will not tell the end of the story, because it's such a big story that in my head, there's at least another 5-issue miniseries to go after this. And, here's the great thing, as you guys know, stories have lives of their own. They take off, they grow. They're like these trees growing branches constantly and getting taller and taller. So, I could get to the end of a second 5-issue miniseries and suddenly have 20 other plot lines emerging that I want to follow. So all of the books we're going to talk about are big. They have scope, and they're fairly epic. And the joy and the frustration of this is I'm getting the first issue out. I'm establishing these things. You'll get a flavor for what this is. You'll know our characters, but I know what's coming. I know how much more story there is to come. So I truly, truly hope that this is successful enough that we can continue and get these stories out there.
Well, we didn't talk about where you are in this campaign. I think it's successful enough. Not that we need to stop. We want to go forward. But
exactly.
You had a $10,000 goal. You're sitting at 24,905. So we are basically about 2 backers from breaking 25,000.
Which is great.
Which is amazing, with 26 days to go. And we will get into this later. I actually backed on the Spellbound page, so I know that there were a few people who have backed separate from Kickstarter. So I think you're gonna be able to do this. I think it's gonna happen. But our job
from your
is
mouth to God's ear, as they say. Yeah.
Our job is to help you get, keep the ball rolling or keep the snowball growing.
Well, we're live right now. Can we get 2 people watching this to support and get us over 25,000?
There you go. Yeah,
that would be great. If while we're sitting here, we can do that. That'd be fantastic.
Yeah, I already tweeted it while we're sitting here saying, come on, let's do it live on the show.
Just so you know, Will and I do take credit for every backer from the beginning of the show on. We don't ask for money or percentages, but we do call it the Explain Yourself bump. We take credit.
And you can
just
have
so
it.
You know.
You can have it. Absolutely.
Kevin, I did see your sale come in, and there have been at least a dozen people who have purchased through there. So
yeah.
Oh, nice.
So a little bit here and a lot there, and it adds up. That's great. So next up, Godsend.
Right. Okay, so Godsend. First of all, let's talk about Matthew Dow Smith. Matt and I have worked on a couple of projects together in the past, but they've been one-shots. We did a Star Trek thing for IDW. We did an alternate Batman thing for DC, and we got to be friendly, and we kept talking about we'd love to do something big together. And Godsend is an idea that I've been nursing in one way, shape, or form probably since the early 2000s. And that's one of the ones that put it away, take it out, work with it some more. I had another idea. I merged them together. That also happens. You have a couple of different ideas and you realize that they mesh really, really well together. And the characters from this story over here migrate over to this story over here. And that happened with Godsend. So during the early days of the pandemic, I sent this idea over to Matt. And Matt had been doing comics online. He'd been doing them on Twitter, like 5 pages a week. He's been putting out his original stuff that he's writing and drawing. And first we thought, wouldn't this be fun? Let's just take this idea and we'll do 5 or 6 pages a week on Twitter, just for the hell of it, just for the sheer creative joy of it. Because especially in those early days of the pandemic, it was a perfect opportunity just to be creative for the sheer joy of it and worry about what happens later on, whether this is going to go out into the world and succeed in some big way or not. So I wrote everything. 90% of the first issue was written and more before I even came to David with this. And so Matt, let me tell you a little bit about the story. So my one-liner is Kirby Gods meets Philip K. Dick meets The Matrix. I love stories where you play with reality, where you play with identity, the questions of who am I versus who do I think I am? Questions like what is reality, what do we assume reality to be versus what reality really is, and spinning people's heads around with that stuff. I grew up on the Twilight Zone. I love Philip K. Dick. And plus, I'm a huge Kirby fan. I love Kirby Gods. I think when you start playing with God characters, you get to move into other realms of metaphysical ideas that you can't get to through superheroes. So all that stuff sort of collides here. So we're in a world where out of nowhere, this celestial being appears. We don't know whether this is a force for good, a force for evil. Seems to be a force for good, but we don't really know. And the media dubs him Godsend because he shows up one day and saves some people. And I said, oh, what a godsend. But the title is beautiful because it works both ways. It's Godsend, but it's also God's end. And that will work into the story at a certain point as well. So our main character, we see right there in the middle of the screen, is named Eric Small. He's a junior high school teacher. He's like 35, 40 years old. And he's basically a depressed, middle-aged, overweight guy with very few friends and kind of a sad life. And he becomes obsessed with Godsend. If you ever seen Close Encounters of the Third Kind, when Richard Dreyfuss becomes obsessed with the UFOs and it takes over his life, that's what happens to Eric. And he doesn't know why. He doesn't know what it is. There's something in this being that is touching people, resonating with them in some profound way. And that's part of the mystery that we will explain as the story goes along. And then one day he's sitting in his living room and this 7-foot-tall being with a turtle's body and a man's head appears in his living room and says, "Get on my back," and flies him out the window. And thus begins a journey that completely shreds all of Eric's concepts of what reality is, who he is, and what the world is. And that's all I'm going to tell you.
Oh, that's awesome.
Nice.
And you said Matthew is lettering this himself. Is he coloring it as well?
He's penciling, inking, coloring, lettering, and he will come to your house, sing and dance for you if you request it. Anything you want, he'll do anything.
And Zoom calling. Right now on the campaign, you can purchase the trade paperback and a 25-minute Zoom call with Matthew. Ask him anything you want. He's an artist of over 25 years and an uber talented one. And we put it up today with 3. We're only down to 1. So,
wow, awesome. A quick question for you, JM. I know that some writers that I've talked to actually do like lettering placements, but then some letterers want to do the placements themselves. How hands-on are you with that?
It used to be in the old days, 100 years ago, before everything went digital. They would actually either send me the physical artwork or remember Xeroxes of the artwork. So as I would write this, if I was working full script, if you're working full script and actually Godsend was full script, you turn in the script, it gets lettered, and usually the editor would place the balloons. But if you're working Marvel style, where I would write a plot, then get the art, and then write the script, I would sit there and I would place all the balloons. When things went digital, that stopped happening so much. But I will make specific notes in the script if there's something I really want in a specific place. And then, of course, you get the lettering back and you might go, oh, that balloon's going to work a lot better over there. I really want that in the panel below that or whatever. But I kind of miss the days when I got a chance to balloon the stories myself. So that
just out of curiosity, JM, during that era, did they just give you a bunch of little white balloons to tape where you wanted?
That you're joking, right?
No, like what did they do? No, I don't mean for the final. I mean just for the placement. So the letter.
For the placement, I would put like a piece of tracing paper over the artwork, and take a pen and just draw it in. Or if it was a Xerox, I would just draw it right on. the Xerox.
And then you're sending the tracing paper to the actual letterer to put over the top.
Yeah, it would go back to the editor who would give it to the letterer, before everything was in email. Yeah. That's a funny idea if they sent us little balloons to stick in there. I never thought about that. That reminds me of the thing that I bet you every comic book writer has heard somewhere over the years. You say to someone, they say, "What do you do?" "Oh, I'm a writer." "And what do you write?" "Well, I write comics." And they go, "Oh, so you put the words in the bubbles?" And in their mind, these stories exist. And my job, they hand me a complete story, and with the balloons already there, and I have to figure out some words to fit. And it used to drive me crazy for years. And I have friends that like knew me for years. I have to sit. Let me explain to you how this works. You know, it's no. I lay on the floor and I bang my head against the wall trying to come up with these stories. I'm not just sticking words in the bubbles. You know.
Yeah, Shawnee says, so you used to make your own transparent layer over the lettering. That's a really cool thing to learn. I didn't honestly know.
Yeah, actually,
myself.
And I remember in the early days, sometimes they would just send me the artwork and say, "Here, just take a pencil and put the balloon shapes in." It was like, that's like crazy. What if
The
I
original
screw it
art?
up? You know, a lot of
Yeah,
original art. You know?
I would be very afraid with my
yeah,
own personal.
Because
Yeah,
you just, you know, 'cause sometimes, you know, you place the balloon and you go, "Oh, that's not where I want it." You know, It doesn't work.
To think how many dollars of original art you've had passed through your hands and sent back.
It's true. It's true.
Mike Zeck.
Yeah, that's exactly what when I think about it. I think about working on Captain America with a big a page of Mike Zeck artwork and a piece of tracing paper over that.
Nice.
Incredible.
So let's move to Layla and the Lands of After, and I believe is this one all ages or YA?
Yeah, you know, these labels are kind of shaky. I think I call it all ages. You know, like I wrote a novel for young readers about in 2010. I thought it was a YA novel. They said it was a whatever the label was before that, young readers or something like that. So the labels, the idea for me is this is a book like projects I've done in the past, like a Bodazad, like Stardust Kid, where a parent can sit down with a child and they can read it together and they can both get something out of that. I always like to quote, I think it's Madeleine L'Engle, and I'm going to mangle her quote, but the essence of her quote was, "Whenever I come up with a story that's really complex and deep, I'll write a book for young readers because that's the best vehicle for it." You know, because you know the best, you know, young adult stuff and kids fantasy is just so rich with concept and idea and philosophy, and you know, think about Wrinkle in Time and everything that's in there. So yeah, so I guess all ages is a good way to label it.
Well, I guess because I forgot to ask, are any of these books, of these four things, that you would not give to, say, a middle grade reader or an elementary school reader?
That's a really good question.
I know there's at least one cuss word in Wisdom.
Right, and there might be one or two in Godsend as well. Nothing like overtly horrifying.
Right.
There's no, you know, no, it's not a constant stream of profanity, nor is there graphic sex or particular, you know, comic book violence. Obviously,
spines being pulled out of backs and
you know,
bleeding out.
I would think a younger reader, you know, not like a younger reader, because you know, but a younger reader would be okay with all these books. But this one is specifically, you know, with that in mind. You know, years ago when I was raising my kids, I was very frustrated by the fact that there were very few comics that you could sit down and read and both enjoy with your kids, the same way that both of you could sit down and read Harry Potter or the Oz books or Narnia or whatever. That's why Mike Klug and I ended up doing a Bodazad back in the day. So I like to return to this genre. So I'm working with Sean McManus. Sean and I worked together on Dr. Fate at DC years ago. It's one of my favorite collaborations, one of my favorite projects that I've ever done that DC still hasn't collected. I'll just put that out there. And
we don't have a huge viewership from the DC editorial offices yet, but when we do, we will pass.
You never know. Someone could be sitting out there right now going, "Oh, I can't believe we didn't collect that. Hurry up and do that."
It's worth putting out.
Sean is just, you know, you hope that the people that you work with are both talented and good people. And the other great thing about this project is just that's the way it's been with everybody. And Sean and I hit it off, not just creatively, but personally when we worked on Dr. Fate. And we've kept in touch over the years. We've done, again, a couple of small things over the years. But we started talking about this project probably 12 years ago. A few years back, we actually almost had it set up at a company. We had the contracts in hand, and all of a sudden I noticed one little clause in that contract that made it impossible for us to sign it, and it just kind of went out the window. But we never gave up on it. So, you know, David has opened that door again for us. And Sean is one of those artists too, like me. He's been in the business a long time, but he just keeps getting better and better and better. He's extraordinary. And very few people can create fantasy worlds the way that Sean can. And he does what you have to do with the fantasy world. Yeah, he can lean right into the fantasy, but he grounds it in real people and real emotions.
Yeah. I'm just looking at the way he does the panels on these pages that you shared there. It creates the fantastic element just in how the panels are on the page.
Oh yeah, yeah. You see those trees in the background, and and they were living trees, in the script. But what Sean developed as he drew it was the trees are constantly reacting to what's going on in the foreground of the story. Their moods are shifting, and he's wonderful. I can't say enough good things about really him or any of these guys, but because Sean and I go back so far, it's really special for me that we're working together here. Anyway, the story starts in 1995, and there's a reason why I said it there. And Layla is 13 years old. She's biking down the street, coming back from her friend's house on a chilly October night. And she's suddenly enveloped in a ball of light. And she finds herself lifted up and carried over the rainbow, through the looking glass, through the wardrobe. I don't know, but she ends up, as you can see there, in what looks like Oz or Wonderland or some magical place. And she's just amazed at first and filled with wonder until this cat comes trotting along. And she realizes this is her cat, her dead cat, who died like 5 years before. And the cat informs her, not only am I dead, Layla, but so are you. That light that enveloped her was a car that ran her down. And this magical land is the afterlife. So it becomes the story of a 13-year-old girl who decides, I don't care, I'm only 13. I'm not staying dead. I'm going to find a way to get back. So she and a group of characters that she encounters along the way, including her deceased grandfather and a character I call the Not Quite Fallen Angel, they go off on this journey to find a way to get Layla back home.
Cool.
So, no, that's a great concept. And the art is just gorgeous.
Is Sean coloring himself on this?
No, Arthur is. Arthur is doing just an extraordinary job on this one. I just want to say one more thing. The reason why it's called The Lands of After, plural, is because my concept is that, the afterlife is made of our imaginations. And so everyone who dies essentially creates the afterlife that they imagined it would be. So, if you're somebody who thinks that, if you're a dog, there'll be bones everywhere. No,
we've had 2 dogs protecting their houses already. We got to get up to 4 if everybody has a dog.
If you're expecting harps and angels and clouds, you'll get that. If you think you've been a terrible person and you're going to get the fires of hell and devils, you'll get that. If your idea of heaven is you want to be 10 years old again and play stickball in the streets with all your friends, you'll get that and more. So there are many, many, many lands that she has to travel through in her journey to even begin to hope to get back home.
Oh, that's awesome. And we're going to get to the 4th one, which, David, I'm going to do a little spoiler. I think this might be the one that you're rooting for, the Western. So I'm not going to skew anybody's voting, but if you vote for Wisdom, I think David's going to be very happy.
Thank you for giving me an opportunity to defend myself on this. JM doesn't like that I keep saying that Wisdom is awesome, but I want to qualify. And I said this to him. I don't even know if it's the one I would vote for. I love them all for different reasons.
Right.
My reaction to this is I'm reading a pitch document that shows years of story and where it's going to go. And what we're voting on right here is issue number 1. So it's a fair game for everyone what's going to happen reading one chapter of it. But in terms of like, whoa, this is a sprawling epic and just blows my mind, the quality of writing that's in here, this was the one for me. Any Man, though, and I've said this also in previous podcasts, is my favorite idea if you're just pitching me like a paragraph, like here it is, like which one do you want to read? That was the one that I was like, oh, but I'm partial to mainstream superhero stuff. And also the twists and turns in there just really appeal to me. Godsend has become maybe my favorite right now after editing all these videos and seeing Matt's artwork and the mood that it's setting. And it feels like you're watching a 1-hour drama on FX or something, so they're all in different places. Layla is, as you guys just talked about, is so beautiful and so imaginative. And I have not said this, I don't think. During the pandemic is when I read Abadazad for the first time. And I've read a lot of JM stuff. But obviously, as we were getting in business together, I started reading even more of his stuff. And I hadn't even heard of that. He had just referenced it a couple of times because I wasn't collecting weekly during the cross-gen days.
Well, DC hasn't collected that yet. They really need to get on that.
Well, it's only three issues.
Well, you read the comics, not the book. See, Abadazad was interesting. We'll take a slight side turn. Abadazad Plug and I did for CrossGen, right when CrossGen was sinking beneath the waves. So we actually did 4 issues. 3 issues got published. They were going through so many changes that every issue had a different editor, as I recall correctly. Because the next week that editor wouldn't be there. It was a shame because CrossGen was a phenomenal company in many ways. But what happened was someone at Hyperion Books for Children, which Disney owned, came along. They saw Abadazad, and they essentially bought CrossGen to get Abadazad. It's a very long story short. There's a lot more to it. And Mike and I did. We turned it into a book series of a combination of prose and comics. And then a similar thing happened. We 3 books were published. A 4th book was written. And because of changes in management over there, again, we sank and we vanished again. So Abadazad is the great heartbreak of my career because we were signed for 4 books. They were telling us we were going to do at least 8, maybe 12. I had this whole story planned out and then gone. So, in some ways, I guess Layla is my opportunity to go back to that kind of story and see it through to the end this time.
It absolutely is. And that's what I was getting at when I brought up Abadazad. Having read that during the pandemic, so I'm pretty recent to it. It's just 3 issues of CrossGen that I read. It is so good. It is so good. If I was listing all of my favorite JM works, it would be in the top 3.
It's in my top 3 also. I have to say, it's absolutely in my top 3, both the comics and the books.
And I encourage anyone, I haven't read the books, I should. I encourage anyone listening to this to go find the CrossGen issues. If they're not collected, they're probably not. Just get them off eBay, whatever. Read them. They're phenomenal. And it will make you really, really wish that this series was continuing. I would love, this will never happen because Disney doesn't need the money, to be able to acquire Abadazad from them and put that back into publication and let you continue that.
I've had a very big producer try to convince them to give him the movie rights, and it hasn't worked out so far. But I don't give up. And also, let's remember that we're really getting sidelined here.
Hey, Disney owns the only ones. Yeah, you're the only ones on it. We talk about whatever we want to talk about.
Okay, Disney owns Marvel, so I have a secret hope that maybe I can convince them to bring those comics back.
Oh, that's great.
And then I can continue them. Anyway, on to Wisdom. Look at, I love that logo. That may be the logos are all great, but that may be my favorite logo.
Agreed.
It's really, really, really great.
Did Taylor do all the logos, or did you have other artists?
Every series artist did their own logos. So this is a Mandrake special. On this particular one, Tom enlisted the help of his son, Jack, who is a graphics artist and artist. I don't know who did what, but they did this together and it's phenomenal. Nice. And then so Sean did the Layla one. Matthew did the Godsend one, and David Baldino did the Anyman one.
Got it.
So David mentioned this pitch document that I gave him. And I don't know if I ever mentioned this to you, David. See, we're learning so much here today, both of us, that the pitch, and it was a big pitch document, but the document that I gave you was cut down from my original document. I might have had 40 or 50 pages of notes on this thing, because what happens to me with story is I tend to see movies in my head. And I literally woke up one morning with this movie in my head. And I'm laying in bed and what's this? And look, there's a guy on a horse. It's a Western. I would better follow him and see what, it's a supernatural Western. And then, you run to the computer and you start writing and all these ideas start coming. I put this picture on Twitter the other day. It was me at like 4 years old in like a complete cowboy outfit, cowboy hat on my hobby horse, and because when I was a kid, and I looked this up recently, like half there were only 3 networks, and half the shows on television when I was like 5, 6 years old were Westerns. And I had, up there on my shelf somewhere, I still have a Roy Rogers figure, Roy Rogers sitting on Trigger, that I got for my 4th birthday. And so Westerns were a big, big thing. And there was a book about the Alamo that I used to take out of the library over and over and over. And I would read it. I'd bring it back. A couple of weeks would go by. I'd take it out and read it again. So I was immersed in that stuff. As I got older, I kind of forgot about it. In fact, was not a very big Western fan at all. But this is reigniting that love. So once I realized I'm writing the Western, I did a lot of research, and this story just grew. And it's sort of our one-liner is it's Deadwood meets the Lord of the Rings, with a little bit of John Ford's The Searchers thrown in for good measure. Our main character, Gabriel Wisdom, starts out as a very innocent soul, a cosseted, rich kid growing up in upstate New York with a very, very wealthy banker father. And all he wants to do is be an actor. And his father, because he's guilty because the mother died when the kid was young and he's, he doesn't really know how to relate to his son, bankrolls this theater company. And so he's not a very good actor, but he gets his own theater company, he tours around, he meets this woman, he falls in love, he gets married. And then his father dies and the whole financial empire collapses and they don't know what to do. So they pack up and they move to Chicago, where he decides to become a reporter and fails miserably. And they pack up the wagon. Where are you going to go? We're going to go west. And they end up in this town out west where he starts a newspaper. And long story short, what happens one night, he's driving back home where his wife and his newborn child are, and he sees that his entire house is in flames. And riding away from the house are these spectral horsemen, these shadow beings on horseback. And he tries to save his wife and child, and he can't. And this begins a turn in his life where he moves from being this sort of innocent soul evolving into one of the most fierce gunmen in the West and ultimately becoming a sorcerer who is tasked with stopping this great evil that is coming for the world and that came and we later learned took his wife and family. So the personal quest for him is, I've got to get my wife and daughter back. And the big quest is, I got to stop this thing that's coming. So it's a very big story. So a 5-issue miniseries will tell a story, but I can see 5 more and 5 more. And I can see this story going on for years, Pretty easily.
Can I jump in real quick with some breaking news?
Yes.
We have passed 25,000 on our campaign.
Yay!
Excellent. Oh, I'm just watching it. Yeah, there it goes. That's excellent. Oh, mine doesn't say that.
That is a gorgeous thing to look at. 25,005.
That's
all right.
great.
So guys,
That's
before
really
we finish, we got to get to 26,000. So
Let me go ahead.
I will hold you guys to that. So if we don't get there, you two have to pay for it.
I got one credit card that I could put in the 1,000 for. It's not going to help you at the end, but
there have been a couple of days where we've been $30 away from something. I was like, I'm just going to pour in $30 myself just to make myself feel better. I didn't do it, but the urge has been there,
I envision your wife grabbing your wrist.
That's right.
So
anyway, you were there a minute ago.
comments.
You showed us one of those great alternate covers, the J.H.
Oh,
Williams
yes.
cover.
There you go. Yeah.
That's J.H. Williams III, who's like one of my favorite artists, and that we got him to do this.
He's going to
cover.
make it. I think he's going to make it in this.
He's got a lot of
career.
potential, that kid. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've loved all his stuff, but the Prometheus stuff that he did with Alan Moore is like just makes your brain explode. It was just some of the most gorgeous artwork I've ever seen in a comic book.
It's the same on his image book, his creator-owned book, Echo Lands. You probably haven't seen it, but it came out a year and a half ago, something like that.
It's
landscape.
Landscape. Yeah, it's really gorgeous.
Yeah, he's amazing. So I was just so thrilled that he did this for us. And there's Liam Sharp, another old buddy of mine. We worked together on Man-Thing at Marvel back in the 90s, one of my favorite collaborators ever. And he did the cover for the collected edition, which is fantastic. And we have Kevin McGuire doing an alternate cover. And we have someone else.
Dustin Wynn.
All right, Dustin Wynn.
On Wisdom.
Yep. And then we have
Any Man, sorry.
Yeah, and then we have our mystery cover.
Our mystery for Godsend that we're hoping to reveal at the end of the campaign.
Yeah.
Nice.
We're also hoping to get a Kevin McGuire his Any Man variant here in the next few days. So maybe next week we'll be dropping.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Yeah, I was so again, these a lot of these are guys, like Kevin, who I've known and worked with for 30 plus years. So I was so delighted when he agreed to participate and be a part of this with us. It's great.
Me too. He's one of my favorites ever.
Yeah.
So talented.
All these guys, we're really, really lucky. All these guys are so damn talented. Every single one of them, and honestly, and I'm as objectively as I could be. If I was a fan, and I am a fan, but if I wasn't the guy writing these stories, I'd be all over this. I would be all over this.
Well, it's so unique too, and so much fun that I want to get into that is, okay, so we've got these 4 books. You're going to back this about $50 in shipping. You get either all 4 comics or the trade paperback collection, and you can do add-ons. I saw the t-shirts and stuff. So after Will gets his, say you got the trade paperback and I get my 4 comics and we read this. So how are we going to be able to vote on what we want to be the first series that Spellbound brings out?
I'm going to send a survey out to the backers who at their email addresses, or an update with like a link where you can go to a site and answer the survey. But it's only going to those who buy all 4, because I don't want somebody who's just like partial to one artist or one idea to just be all over that one. I want somebody who read all 4 and said, like with me, when I was reading the pitch doc and you were saying, oh, you're partial to wisdom or whatever. No, like I'm going to read them all, and the one that I think is the best and I'm most looking forward to would be the one that I would vote for. That's just how I am, you know. What you pitch me, if you pitch me an idea and then you execute the idea, those are going to be 2 very different reactions. So I would be judging it based on how they're executed in these issues. But anyway, those of you who do back all 4 will get to vote, and whoever gets the most number, whichever title gets the most number of votes, the plan is for that one to go forward for an issue 2, 3, 4, maybe a 5. And we put those all out at once about this time next year in another Kickstarter campaign, so that you can buy issues 2, 3, 4, and 5, or a collection that has all 5 issues in it with some bonus features, etc. The way that the financials work on this, it's very expensive to do 5 issues of even 4 issues of a comic book. We could do issue number 2 of all of them, and that is still an option that people could potentially vote for. We haven't really finalized whether we're going to offer that. I kind of root against that, because then I got to wait a year to read chapter 2 of 4 different books, and then I'm going to wait close to a year for chapter 3. I'll lose interest, and this is my baby, you know? I would rather see one of them get the red carpet treatment all the way through, and then we could switch to another one, you know?
No, that does make total sense. The cool thing about the Kickstarter audience is some of us are Wednesday warriors. Some of us are used to, you know, getting 12 issues and an annual. And some of us are really kind of would be cool with that. But I do get what you're saying about getting a complete, 1 through 5, not a full story, but the full mini done. And then, like that might feel better. But the cool thing is it's not just, you're not a shark anymore. You don't have to always be moving to stay alive, but it's still better to be moving than not. Shawnee did ask, would that include someone who backed at the digital level for all 4? So she's going to be part of the survey. Okay, great.
Absolutely. As long as you're reading all 4 so that your judgment is not partial, right? You get a vote.
Right. So you can buy the individual issues, you could buy the collection, but either way you're getting them all. I think it's a great idea. And what I talked about earlier about taking a wall away between creator and audience, this allows the audience to participate even more, and they get to choose. Now, there's a part of me that I would love to just, do you remember Barry Smith did a book called Barry Smith's Storyteller some time ago?
Oh, yeah.
Maybe 15 years ago, 20 years ago. And he had like 3 or 4 new ideas, and it was treasury size, so it was gorgeous. But I loved reading that and reading all 4 of them. All 4 of the stories. So part of my brain is like, I would love to see all 4 of them in one book again. But I get David's point about, do you want to read a chapter a year? That could be a little frustrating, unless of course we're so successful that suddenly we got a real publishing company here and we're rolling them all out every 3 months or something.
Well, yeah, and I certainly do not want to ask for any numbers, but there could be a number that you guys reached where that becomes possible. So that's why we need to keep pushing, even though you've hit 25,000. Let's keep pushing so that maybe that's an easy decision for you guys to make, that you can surprise us with in a backer update, after the campaign.
Absolutely.
But we don't need to know, and you wouldn't tell us anyway. So I'm not going to ask for any of that. I'm just going to try to let people know about the project, so maybe that happens.
We're thinking of adding Keanu Reeves' name to the Kickstarter page.
I have to say, I've seen one project that did that, and it did okay.
My joke has been like, it's like, big letters, Keanu Reeves, and little letters has nothing to do with this.
Well, we haven't announced the Godsend variant artist, so it could be
Keanu Reeves. That's true. That's true.
You have to back to find out, and you can't back out if it's not.
So here's the challenge. By the time we're done talking, we want to hit $1.5 million today.
There you go.
Well, I'm gonna get my wife to put some coffee on.
Right. So we're going to be here a long time.
Oh no, that is awesome, and I really think it's a cool, unique idea. And what I loved about it when I first heard about it, I was like, oh, okay, so you guys are coming in, you're doing the Kickstarter, but you're doing it in a way that is unique. I've never seen anything like this. Have you?
Well, that was part of the idea for why I was pitching doing all 4 instead of just picking one. Was that would allow us to have 4 artists with followings, potentially multiple colors, letters, whatever, multiple variants, and we would draw in audiences from all of them as opposed to just relying on one, as awesome as he is, creator and one artist. I've seen other projects on Kickstarter with high level talent on there, but they're still kind of just like a blip, you know? So I was hoping, hey, look, we've got Liam Sharp, we've got J.H. Williams, we've got Kevin McGuire, and we've got all 4 series artists, and we've got JM. And it's like we're dropping new news over the course of the last few weeks if you've been following, and it makes it feel like there's something big in the air, you know, as opposed to just, oh, this guy that you may, and I'm not talking specifically about JM, I'm just saying this talent that you may have read years ago or read recently is doing a Kickstarter. Okay, let me check it out. It's more like, whoa, I have to stop and take notice. What is this company that I've never heard of who's got all of this amazing talent under one roof on one project? I would be backing this. I have, I won't get into my other business, but I have another business. And what I learned running that business for the last 15 years is about drawing attention. It really is about eyeballs, and it's just a percentage of that eyeballs. People are out there who would buy this project and just don't know about it right now. And the struggle is just to reach those people. You might be able to pay for advertising and reach them, but if you do that, you might not make any money because the profit you did make was spent on advertising. So it's a delicate balance you have to walk. And this is my first foray into the comic book world. JM has been doing a spectacular job of getting the word out there, not only with the followings he already had, but just doing podcasts like this. He's done, I mean, I know you haven't done them all, but JM, aren't you up to close to 20 podcasts total that you've...
Something like that between now
it's
and November.
That's like a full day of his life is going to be...
After which, I'm going to throw my computer out the window, get in bed, and not come out for a month.
Well, Will and I are honored that you came to talk to us. We really are.
Well, you know, Will, I came back just because of that picture, which got me last time of your dog sitting there. You know, the last time we spoke, the whole time I'm just looking at the dog. You know,
it's funny you mentioned that because just a little bit to the right, I've got the slipcase for the Barry Windsor Smith Storyteller stuff
that's
there
funny.
on the shelf.
One more thing I want to say before we can move on, you can ask us other things, is that most of these books, the books are almost all complete right now. So it's, you know, I've heard stories of people that, you know, I contributed to a Kickstarter, and then, you know, I was 18 when I contributed. I'm 92 now, and I just got the book today. And you know, from some stories I've heard, maybe I'm only slightly exaggerating, you know. So these books are almost done, and by the time the Kickstarter is over, these books will be finished. They're all like in the final stages right now.
We have maybe 10 total pages of coloring to do, and like 20, not even 20, probably 10 or 15 of lettering total.
Wow. That'll
be done with the coloring will be done in a week, and the lettering will probably be done no more than 2 weeks from now. Like that's 100%, all the covers, all the books. And then the variant covers, we already have one. We have one coming in within a week, and another one following just after that, and another one probably after that. But we do need a few weeks after the close of the campaign in order to wrap up the trade paperback, because we're doing bonus features. And JM's going to be writing an introductory essay to each title, sort of talking about the genesis and history of the idea and his passion for the project, why it's lived with him this long. And then we're also going to have bonus art material, maybe show some script pages. And then the big coolest part, I think, is that we got former Marvel editor-in-chief Tom DeFalco to write a foreword speaking about the project and JM's career. And almost no one, maybe no one in this industry knows JM better or as long as Tom DeFalco does. And I said this somewhere else, but Tom is the reason that JM got brought back to Marvel after Justice League International and did the Spider-Man run that led to Kraven's Last Hunt. So you know, we owe Tom something too. If like me, you're a big fan of the Craven's Last Hunt story.
Absolutely.
Just one correction. It wasn't after Justice League International. It was simultaneous with Justice League.
Oh.
Because that's one of the things that when I think about in retrospect, I was writing both those books at the same time. Here's the darkest Spider-Man story ever told, and our goofy, wonderful Justice League at the same time. And I think it probably kept me sane being able to do both things simultaneously.
The dark and the light at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, David, a quick question for you. I know you've looked at Kickstarter from a fulfillment setup. I mean, we're talking, you know, potentially 1,000 backers. I fulfilled 300 approximately, and that's some investment in time and backing materials. What does the end of the project look like from your standpoint? Are you going to go grab JM and he's going to be packing stuff too?
I think Matthew Dell Smith is the one that is going to have to, because they said he'd dance and sing, so I bet he can pack up.
Yeah.
I have a 7-year-old son who's very eager to help pack these boxes. He is already.
That should last about 15 minutes.
He's very eager to get his hands on the very first printed copy of Layla, just so you know.
Oh, very
That's
nice.
great. That's great.
It depends on where we land, how I'm going to pursue this. I do have experience doing bulk mailings. And as I mentioned a few minutes ago, I do own another business. So I have a team in place and a lot of experience doing fulfillment. I'm not really turned off by that. It really depends on what the numbers end up being, because if they are high enough, then I might engage with a fulfillment house, possibly a printer who fulfills. And I have friends who've run several Kickstarters who do that. And so I have lines into all them. But one way or another, you're going to get the books and you're going to get them as soon as humanly possible after they arrive from the printer. This is important to me. Again, I have run a business successfully for 15 years and I'm a comic book fan who's backed these Kickstarters. I don't want to wait forever. And frankly, I have enough things on my plate and in my mind that I just want to, let's get this one off and let's think about the next thing. I don't want to have this thing gnawing in the back of my head for 6 to 12 months. It was, and JM touched on it a little bit, but it was very important to me that we wouldn't launch this project until we were done or about to be done, because worst case scenario, I want to be able to send this out the week after, like potentially, if that was where we landed. Like if we didn't do a collected trade and we were just doing the 4 issues, we would have been able to do that the day this was over and just send it to the printer, wait 3 months or whatever they take and send it to the people. I have backed over 20 comic book projects. I think only one has not fulfilled for me. I've heard the horror stories. I haven't had a ton of experience with it, but it's 100% not going to happen with this. No matter what, this is funded. In fact, that's why we set the goal so low. We knew we were going to hit $10,000, potentially even in day one. The actual number to break even is much higher. It's probably 4 times higher than what we did on day one. We may or may not get there, but I wanted you to rest assured that the books were coming out one way or another. Like if it's a loss, it's a loss, but we're going to publish them and get them out there. I didn't do all this work and come this far just to be like, sorry, I'm not even going to print them.
Yeah, no, based on your was it $10,000 goal for 4 issues and a trade paperback? I could tell that you were making sure to get some seed money, but that is not paying for the printing.
I've heard the algorithms favor those that fund quickly, and then it's like, oh, they're 300% funded, so that must be a good one. Let me help it. So it's like, all right, well, let's see what the algorithm's like.
Nobody knows what the algorithm is. We all have theories, and it changes daily. But it's what I'm saying is we need to keep helping you spread the word on this, because
absolutely,
if you're looking at it and going, oh gosh, they had a $10,000 goal and they're up to 25,000. I mean, a normal single comic is usually $4,000 to an $8,000 goal. Trade paperbacks usually a $5,000 to a $15,000 goal, and you've got 4 individual comics and a trade paperback that we're trying to get funded. So if you're listening to this or watching this, and you're interested in it, either go to spellboundcomics.com or to the Kickstarter and support it now, because the money beforehand is a godsend. Any man would be.
And every dollar that comes in, if we do make any money, that's just going towards doing the second one. Like
Right.
this is not my full-time income. So I'm not going, oh, good, thank God I can pay my house mortgage as a result of this. That's not what's going on. It's an investment in order to see something through. And hopefully, because of my 20 years in Hollywood, we can turn this into a TV show or movie, one or more of these ideas. So really, I'm just hoping that these ideas either break even or make enough to keep fueling themselves forward. And we can have a lot of fun doing it along the way. And I would like to say one more quick thing about Kickstarter comics, because some people get turned off by the price. I have a lot of experience buying them, and I understand how it works. It's really just math. A couple people did message us in the last 24 hours saying, why is this so expensive? But it's not that much more or any more expensive than many of the Kickstarters I've done. $15 is a pretty standard price for a single issue comic.
Mm-hmm.
The math of it is, if you're going to pay a professional writer and professional artists and professional colorists and professional letterers and professional designers and variant artists and all the expenses that come into this, plus the 10% Kickstarter fee, backer kit, and the printing costs, then, and you're only going to sell 1,000 issues, you have to amortize that over those issues. So yes, maybe only 1,000 people are going to show up to back it, but we hopefully will get the number we need in order to keep going. If we were to only charge $6 an issue, we might still only get 1,000 people, and we would not be able to continue on. So it's an unfortunate mathematical reality of doing crowdfunded comics. And what I said earlier in the show about, I think the future is this, it just requires more and more people thinking first, let me check Kickstarter for comics, or let me check whatever the next crowdfunding option is for comics. And then we'll have that 5,000 or 10,000 audience, and we could charge $7 for the comic instead of 15. And
I went to, you have J.H. Williams doing that gorgeous variant cover. I'm a huge Gaiman fan, huge Sandman fan. So he did Overture with Gaiman, and it was as pretty a comic book as can exist. It was a great story. And I read one page and there were 2 ads. And then I read 2 pages and then there were 4 ads. And then I read another page and I was like, oh, so DC is paying their yearly bills with Overture, which is their right and it's fine. But I'm going to guess no ads in these comics, right?
Not exactly.
Oh, okay. Do we have some?
I kind of mentioning I do have a business. I have commissioned sort of an old style comic book page, like the Hostess type ads.
Oh, neat.
Or that O.J. Simpson sneaker ad from back in the day. My business is selling medicine cabinets, and I have a really fun 1-page ad for that going in there. I'm not going to say specifically here because it's not done yet, but I also have intentions of approaching certain companies to put an ad in there. I will say there will be a Tomorrow's publication ad. If you guys are familiar with Tomorrow's, they publish Back Issue, the Jack Kirby Collector, Retro Fan, and several others, Alter Ego by Roy Thomas. We have ads in 5 of their magazines. 3 of them are out right now. They were just delivered about a week ago, and 2 more are coming out over the next couple of months. And as a tip for tat, we're putting their ad into ours. So
okay.
Awesome.
So quite honestly, there's not a lot of income coming in from these ads.
No, I mean, that was a free ad exchange situation.
So the point I'm making is you buy a $6 comic that DC or Marvel has paid for all of the creation with ads, or a Kickstarter book for $12 that has to pay for the ads and the printing.
But keep in mind that DC book is 30, 50,000 copies. So they're getting a good chunk of ad money if they sell an ad. If you're trying to get someone to give you money for 1,000 printed copies, and it's, maybe even less backers because one person's getting all 4, you're really paying for the eyeballs. It would, even if I got money, it wouldn't be anything that would change the course of this.
And for the collectors, you're getting one of a few hundred or a few thousand, as opposed to getting one of 30,000 of issue 1 of a thing. Yep. So that's where the price happens on Kickstarter.
I think your point there is that Kickstarter comics are rarer, and for the collector in us, that should be something. And I've always been curious about that because I haven't seen that catch on and blow up yet, but it makes perfect sense that is how it would be.
You know when it will be that, I guess, when a Kickstarted comic suddenly becomes a TV show or a movie, that the people that have that first issue where there's only 500 or 1,000 of them, that's when that mania will start.
100%.
Yeah,
well,
it's true.
Your viewers should know that I have a 20-year history in TV and film, and I have active representation, and I've already pitched ideas to them, and I already have a meeting set up for 2 weeks from now with an exec producer of several movies. I don't want to mention the movies. And who knows? He's a huge comic book fan. So it's very possible in the future, and that was part of the dream going into this, that one of these will become a TV show or movie. And if that happens, you would be on the ground floor if you were to back this Kickstarter right now.
That's really awesome. We did get a message on the Facebook. We're going to kind of maybe slip into just general comic books. And the name didn't come through, but Facebook user Craven's Last Hunt, aside from being the best written Spider-Man series written during my time reading the book, was my first crossover series. So thank you. And I guess, thank you. I guess
you're welcome.
I had nothing to do with it.
It amazes me. I have to say that it's that story came out in 1987. It's been in print almost continuously since then. I go to conventions, and it's not just the people that read it back then. There are people that are reading and discovering that story right now every day, and you can't ask for anything more. It's an amazing thing. I'm very grateful.
Yeah, I was when I found out you were on, I went on Hoopla and went to my local library, and I downloaded that one, JLI, and an X-Men group that your name is on, but I don't know. I read 5 issues and it wasn't you, and I'm like, okay,
what book was it?
X-Men Extinction. It was like X-Men 300. I don't know what.
I wrote X Factor for a while. Maybe there's some X Factor stuff in there. I don't know.
Maybe. But I didn't get to you yet. But it was a lot of fun. One of the questions I wanted to ask, as just a comic book fan. So you get hired with is it Kevin? The JLI you wrote with Kevin Giffen. I'm sorry. Mm. So when you're brought on as a writer or writing team to a book like a JLI or an Avengers, do you guys come up with the editor a story idea and then decide on characters that might work with it on the team? Or do you guys come up with the characters that you want to bounce off of each other first and then work on the plots and adventures that happen?
Well, JLI was a weird beast because JLI grew out of, the Legends miniseries, whatever the big miniseries was, that was going to change everything back in the day. Because every 15 minutes there's another miniseries that's going to change everything for all time. And so people up the food chain at DC decided who was going to be in our book. So that was, I think, decided before any of us even came near it. And they just handed that to Andy Helfer, who was our editor and such an important part of that process. Mm-hmm. And then Keith came along, and Keith was going to write the book by himself. But Keith was primarily known as an artist, but to call, even back then, to call Keith just an artist, because Keith is one of the most creative human beings I've ever encountered in any media, anywhere, anytime. He's you can't call him brilliant. It goes way past brilliant with Keith. Mm-hmm. And then Keith and Andy realized that Keith I think he would have been fully capable, but he wasn't ready to move to the next stage and do the dialogue, right? And so I had written the final, 6 issues of the previous incarnation of the Justice League. Yes, I killed Vibe, and I killed Steel and all those characters, but I did it. They told me I had to do it. It was actually a pretty fun story. And I always say that Jerry Conway got the last laugh because everybody used to rag on those characters. And then suddenly, they're all over, TV constantly. So he got the last laugh on all of that. So Andy basically pulled me in and said, Keith really doesn't want a dialogue. Do you want a dialogue? And I'm like, just be the dialogue guy, and he's going to plot the story. And I kicked and screamed for like 6 months on that book. The first 6 months, I actually quit at one point. Because you want to know why I quit? I quit because it was too much fun and too easy. I wasn't struggling with it enough. Then one day I woke up and said, this is the best gig ever, because Keith and I, something magical happened, and we ended up in this mind meld together. He would create the plots, and then I was free to do essentially whatever I wanted with them. A lot of people, if they give you their plot, you better follow exactly what's going on there. And I would just start riffing and getting the characters talking, and suddenly relationships would emerge that weren't there before. And then Keith would see what I did, and he would spin it off into something else, and I'd see what he did. And we always say it was like a game of tennis, back and forth and back and forth. And then we had this incredible piece of magic that we got Kevin Maguire, who was pretty much brand new at the time, and exactly the right person to draw that book, because the book was completely character-based. And it was humor. There was a lot of humor in it. So you needed people to react and act and interact. And so you can't predict when something like this is going to happen. You know, to all of us, it was just another gig. Keith likes to say that we all thought we were going to get fired in 6 months. I didn't think that, but to me, it was just like, okay, here's the gig I'm doing now. And it turned into this thing that, like Craven, is all these years later, you know, go to conventions. I always say a third of what I sign is Craven's Last Hunt. A third is JLI related, and the third is everything else. And there's a lot of everything else, you know? So it was like a blessing from the gods. It was a magical book. And then, you know, we've all in one way, shape or form, especially Keith and I, have kept working together over the years on a lot of different projects, projects.
That cover of issue #1 is just one of the like 12 iconic comic book covers of all time. Just, you know, all of them standing there, arms crossed, looking up. And, you know, because when I popped it in, I was like, I got to make sure that, and I was like, oh, well, of course. But that moment in time of that particular incarnation, it's kind of neat that it just sort of luckily, you know, like not luckily happened. Obviously, everybody there was talented, but
yeah, but it doesn't matter. I've been on plenty of projects where everybody's talented and they sink like a stone, and they might have been great books too. You just don't know. You don't know what's gonna. You know, I always say once you're done with the story, you've released it into the wild and it belongs to the audience now. And you don't know what the hell they're going to do with it. There are Spider-Man stories I've written that honestly, I personally like more than Craven's Last Hunt. But the audience, and I love Craven's Last Hunt, I'm not saying I don't, but the audience decided there was something about the story that resonated with them in a way that nothing else did. And, you know, who am I to argue with them?
Can I just throw one follow-up in there to Kevin's initial question for JM? He was talking about editorial picking the team members for Justice League International, and you said they were all handed to you. Wasn't there a story involved in like how you guys were like, we're getting no A-listers here. Like the only thing they would give you is Batman.
Right. That was the best thing that ever happened to us, because the only A-lister we really got was Batman. And that was through the good graces of Denny O'Neil. And
they gave you Captain Marvel and then took him away, right?
Right. Yeah, there was some, and it wasn't, there was some rights issue where, like, I forget what it was, but it was like DC could only use Captain Marvel for X number of months. Then they had to put him away and bring him back. It was some weird thing. We would have kept him forever. But the fact that we got, quote, B-listers, and the truth of the matter is there's no such thing as a B-list characters. You can take any character and turn them into a great character. It was a blessing to us, because if it had been Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Flash, Green Lantern, all those editors would have been over our shoulders constantly telling us what we couldn't do. Nobody cared what we did with Fire and Ice and Oberon and Guy and Beetle and Booster. They didn't. So we got to take those characters and make them our own. It was the same thing years before when I started at Marvel, when I was writing the Defenders. I grabbed every odd little character from the corner that I could, because those are the ones you could really do something with. And so it was a blessing to us that they gave us those, quote, B-list characters who are now A-list characters.
One of the indie writers who's kind of gone from Kickstarter to writing at Marvel, David Propose, is doing Savage Avengers, and it feels a bit like what he's done. Is he grabbed Cloak and Dagger, he grabbed Conan, you know, like
Deathlock,
2099.
Yeah, real well-known characters that are also not huge names, and he gets to kind of take them out of time and do anything he wants with them. That's really a recipe.
You want that kind of freedom to just go and play like that.
A follow-up for JM, but real quick, I love David's work. So I want to give him a shout out. He just now crossed into Marvel and mainstream, but his Kickstarters is how he kind of built up his following, and they've all been uber successful. And I just fell in love with his writing. JM, when you were talking about editorial, like it was a blessing that they weren't getting involved with the big, you know, if you had Wonder Woman, etc. You did have Batman. I think you said Denny O'Neil was the editor at the time. He never shared what you did to Batman.
Denny was so gracious and let us have fun, and you know, that kind of explains kind of who Denny was. You know?
Yeah.
He was
and look, no harm done. So I would
no harm done. And here's the thing, you know, I think once we got started, these other editors, you're going to make fun of our characters. We never made fun of those characters. We had fun with those characters, and it's a real big difference. The characters we might have made fun of were like, you know, the ridiculous characters we created, like Mr. Nebula, the intergalactic planet designer, you know. But those established DC characters, we were having fun with them. And I always maintain that the fact that there was so much humor in the book made those characters more three-dimensional and more real and more like people that I know in my life.
Absolutely.
I just think it's a good lesson that the Denny stayed out of it. Batman was treated in a comedic setting. It didn't hurt the brand at all. And let's let people do other stories with the characters. They don't have to
although is Batman really still out there? Are we certain they didn't destroy Batman?
He only has like 15 monthly titles now, right? I mean,
it's amazing, isn't it? When I go through the solicits every month, when I come out online, it's like, holy Moses, I can't believe how many Batman books there are.
You want to put out a title with an A at the front or at DC, or you're never going to see it.
You can see it.
Yeah. So on Craven's Last Hunt, I read that pretty diligently. And one thing that I noticed is the symbolism of the rats, the spiders in the background at all times because of Pest and of course, Spider-Man and Craven. It was almost like reading old Mad Magazine where there was, and this is not a joke, it's symbolism, but do you remember where?
Do you mean when they used to have the little things in the borders?
Yeah.
I love those when I was a kid. You turn the book around and
In your writing process in general, but Craven's is the example I have, that symbolism that you were playing with in the background, did that come immediately when you started to do it, or how did that kind of process come? It was just
a natural outflow, of just wanting to play visually. One of the great things that Alan Moore did when he came into the business, which is interesting because he was a writer and not an artist, but he really understood how to use visual metaphor in his stories. And I remember reading his stuff going, that's great. I got to do more of that, And so it's like, the recurring motifs, like the Gravedigger, we cut to the Gravedigger every 3 or 4 pages and playing with those visuals. But the reality is when I sit down to write, it's a weird thing to say, especially when I'm plotting the story. Hopefully I'm not thinking. Hopefully my thinking brain is out of the way. And what's open is the door at the back of my head that links up my unconscious with whatever's out there in the land of story, where those stories come from, and it's flowing through. So I'm not thinking, oh, the symbolism of the spiders and the rats and and whatever. Sometimes people ask me about stories, and it's like, and I go, oh, is that in there? Oh, you're right, that is symbolic, and that does reference that, and I wasn't even thinking about it, but my unconscious was. Right. So for me, the game is always about opening that door to the unconscious, and I learned that early on. And that the more you surrender to your unconscious, the better your work is going to be. Like what I was talking about with Wisdom, when I woke up in the morning and I'm watching a movie. Where the hell did that movie come from? I don't know. But I wrote it down as quick as I could, before it jumped into somebody else's head and you'd be talking to somebody else about Wisdom because it left,
It reminds me of McCartney's story about yesterday. He woke up with the tune and was sure that he stole it from someone. He was sure it, and he just kept asking everybody what song this was and nobody knew it. And so if Wisdom can be your yesterday, I think you're going to do okay, buddy.
Yeah.
Well, it's like, it's like Lennon talks about writing across the universe. And it's like, or there's even better story when he talks about writing Nowhere Man. And he was sitting for hours and hours trying to write a song. And he couldn't get it to happen. And he gave up in disgust and he laid on the floor. And the whole song came to him in one gulp. There it was. There's the song. And that's the magic of it. That's the thing I love most about writing. When I'm out of the way and this magical thing is happening, it's like a mystical experience. It's like beyond my individual identity. We're into a whole other plane of being there. It's great. It's great. And that's why I can still do it.
Yeah. Do you, well, for lack of, I guess, a better phrasing here, what do you feed the beast? I mean, because you brought William Blake, because I'm an English geek, all right? You brought William Blake into Spider-Man. I mean, you say you get out of the way, but you must, ingest all kinds of things.
Here's the paradox also. You get out of the way, but it's coming through the filter of your consciousness. Whatever this is being, I really imagine like there's this whole other dimension where all these stories exist and they're getting beamed into our heads. But it has to come through the filter of you, of your personality, of your obsessions, of your likes and dislikes, of the themes that obsess you, So, William Blake is one of those things that's just woven into me, just like you'll see Dostoevsky referenced either literally or thematically in a lot of my stories, Bradbury, whatever it is, or just the themes. You look through all my stories and you'll see themes of personal identity, themes of cosmic identity, things about family relationships with your father, all those things, you know, you're going to beam that story through my head, but all my obsessions are going to be infused into that story. And then there's another step that goes beyond that, which is, here you have, like, I'm writing Spider-Man, this individual character that's existed before me and will exist long after I'm gone. And yet, and it's a very specific individual character, and yet I am pouring everything that I am into this character. So there's this merging of me and that character that becomes something else when I write it. So there's so many levels and layers to this game of imagination and manifestation that we go through as writers. And that's what I love, you know? So, and then they become real people. You know, I've said this many times, but I really mean it. Like, Peter Parker is a real person to me. I don't think of him as some imaginary guy. I know him so well, and I've known him for so many years, and they have to become real in order for you to write them. And then even with your own characters, right? All the characters in these 4 books that we're writing, they come out of me, and yet they have to take on their own individual identity and live their own existence. Even though they're born out of me, they're not me anymore. And then, as we said before, then it goes into the audience's hands. So whose story is it? I don't know. I don't know. You know?
And when they make a choice you don't expect them to make.
Yes.
I mean, I haven't written nearly as much as you, but every once in a while, like, you know, this is, and then, and you're like, you got to follow it.
I always say it's like, I'll say 2 things. First, I always say it's like you're on a horse, and you have a goal. Like, I'm riding this horse across the prairie, and I'm going to that town 7 miles that way. And you're, come on, horse. And the horse is pulling off to the right. And you're like, come on, horse. And the horse is pulling off. You have a choice. You can force that horse to go the way you want it to go, or let it gallop off and follow where it wants to lead you. And that's always the right decision, is to follow it. And I'll tell you one quick story. We talked about Abadazad before. And this was, I think, the 3rd issue of the cross-gen comic. And I used to do Abadazad. One of the premises was that there was a series of children's books written in the early 1900s called Abadazad. And so each issue would begin with a text page or 2 from those books, which I would write in the style of, say, L. Frank Baum, as if it was written in 1901 or whatever. Mm-hmm. So I've got this issue, the 30. The book's going great. One of the best things I've ever worked on. We're into the 3rd issue. I've got all my tent poles mapped out. You know, I know where this story is supposed to go. I have a group of new characters that I'm going to introduce, and I start to write this text page from the book. You know, and literally I type the name of a character that, until I typed it, I have never heard of this character. It was not in my head. Not in my notes. It was nowhere, but I typed this character and he's on the page, and this is really weird. Well, let me find out who the hell he is. And I keep typing. So now I see, well, that's an interesting character. Maybe at some point in the future, we'll bring him into the actual main story and we'll play with him. But right now I have this story to tell, and I'm trying to write this story, and it's just falling apart. You know, the feeling when you can feel your story just crumbling into dust in your hand. And I can feel it's this character. He's like, I got to be in this story. You can't be in this story. I have all these new characters that I want. I got to be in this story. And when I finally realized I had no choice, and I took this character and introduced him to the story, everything just worked perfectly. And all these other new characters I was going to introduce never showed up. And this character became one of the most important characters in the story. Where did he come from? I had never heard of him until I typed his name on the page.
Nice.
And
that's the beauty of the unconscious.
Wasn't Tolkien grading papers when he wrote something like under a hill and wherever lived a hobbit named Bilbo Baggins, and they looked at it and said, I wonder what that means.
That's great. But that's the beauty of it. That's the beauty of it. So I have time for a couple more questions, and then I have to jump.
No, I will. Do you have something? Because I don't want to hold you any longer, but I have enjoyed every second of it.
Fine.
I guess kind of one of the things that, I try to write. Kevin is also a writer on Tart. I do Crossover Division. We have people that watch that are also writers and artists. You've been doing this consistently for so many years. I guess what's the secret sauce? How can we do this too?
How right?
How right? Yeah, how right?
That's the beauty of it. I don't know what the hell the secret sauce is. I really, really don't. The secret sauce is probably what we've been talking about, is the fact that, all right, I'm done. I don't have any more stories. How am I going to write it? Even something like, they can't do, you want to write it? You want to write a Ben Reilly story? Well, actually, that was the wrong example because I said yes in 10 seconds because I love that character. But sometimes you think, I'm going to come up with another story. And then all of a sudden that door opens in your head and you're excited because I don't know what's going to happen. And that enthusiasm, that magic of storytelling, and I said this many times, but it bears repeating. There's a concept in Chinese thought called beginner's mind, where anything you do, you should do as if you've never done it before. And every time you sit down to write a story, you're essentially, even though we're not writing on paper anymore, you're facing a blank page. And sometimes I sit down and I literally have said to my wife, I don't know how I've ever done this. I don't, with all those stories that are sitting on my shelf, I have no clue. I don't know how to write a story. How do you, I don't know. And it's like I've never done it before. And then suddenly something clicks and off you go. And as long as that excitement is there, I'll keep doing it. And if that excitement isn't there, you shouldn't be doing it. And I'm a real believer in the old cliche. It's a cliche because it's true, to follow your dreams. Because I think if you follow your dreams, my line is they may not lead you where you expect to go, but if you follow them, they will always lead you someplace good. It may be someplace unexpected, but it will be a good place. Yeah. It's kind of what we're saying about the horse. Well, I want to be the great American novelist. And somehow I end up writing comic books, but then comic books lead to TV, live action and animation. And I end up writing books and, but it's like, I thought I would so you follow those passions and they lead, I know someone who, their thing was to work in theater and they were going to be on Broadway and they had some success, but what they ended up doing was teaching theater. And this person became such an extraordinary force in the community, touching the lives of so many kids, changing their lives by working with them and doing plays with them. So that wasn't necessarily where this person started out, but where they ended up is probably better than any place else that their lives would have led them. So just follow the passion and see where it takes you. Many stops along the way for me have been unexpected, really.
No, awesome.
I used to think I was going to be a rock and roll star. Look where I ended up.
You got time? I saw Weird Al 2 days ago. You got time.
Okay. By the way, JM has at least one full album of music on YouTube, and it's very good. So
thank you, David. Thank you.
I want to throw two comments in there on that. One is that JM won't say about himself, but one thing has been very clear from this very intimate year and a half now that we've had building towards this project. His work ethic is second to none. And a lot of people, myself included, I think are, because, I've been a writer for 20 years and I have that same feeling. It's very familiar to me of sitting down with that blank page and being like, oh, here we go again. It's like you think you climbed it and then you're back and it's like you never climbed it. It's exhausting. He finds a way to sit up straight and do it every time. And I think other people find excuses to procrastinate or get away from it. I don't know intimately JM's schedule, but I do know that he's often like, I'm scheduling myself to write from blank to blank, so I can't do blank. That's a good skill, I think, for anyone to assign to themselves. If this is something you're serious about and you want to make a career out of it, then force yourself to have a work day of blank hours to do that. Even if you have a full-time job and it's not writing, give it that amount of time that it deserves. And not just writing. With this project that we've been doing, and I didn't anticipate this coming in, but there's so much other work involved beyond just being the writer. He has been a true partner and collaborator with me on the business side from day one. Every business decision that's been made, we have collaborated on. I solicit his opinion, take it into account. And on every specific book, just so it's out there, every artist is an equal collaborator and voter. And I said this before we even started, all three people get an equal vote and two decides it. So if I'm like, no, I want the logo to be blank, but both the writer and the artist are saying, no, I think the other logo is better, I just give up because I feel like it's a collaboration and two very smart, accomplished people are saying that. But not to get too far off, work ethic, and this man has gods of it.
Say that 10 times fast.
And the other thing is, I really liked what JM said about pursuing your dreams, because I see that dovetailing back to where we are here. We started this whole conversation with Spellbound and me saying I was reading all those books during the pandemic and it reawakened this dream in me. I I wasn't, no offense, Jim, I wasn't thinking about JM before I happened to see him in the Baltimore Comic Con. And I was like, oh yeah, I remember all those things he wrote that I love. And he's interesting. Let me ride the wave of life. I see him now on social media doing a class. Well, I've written for 20 years. I probably don't need a basic writing class, but I'm bored. Let me try it. Oh, look, we get along. Oh, look, we're still keeping in touch. Oh, I'm hearing about his ideas. Simultaneously, I'm thinking about publishing. Let me bring it together. Okay, I'll do all this work. It's a lot of work, guys, but I'll do it all because this is the path that life has sort of taken me, and I'm letting it happen. You know, when I get up every day during this campaign, I'm like, oh man, I have to start promoting again. Like your whole, I've never promoted.
That's the hardest part. I have to say, it's not in my nature, and you know, to be tweeting about the same thing 47 times a day. And yet you have to do it, because the truth, as we know, of social media is, if I tweeted now and 5 minutes from now, there might be 5,000 people that weren't on Twitter, you know, 5 minutes before. You just don't know. So you have to. I've seen with projects where I mention a project a bunch of times, I think I never should mention it again. And then like a month goes by and you mention it and someone goes, I didn't know that was coming out. And you think, oh my God, I've mentioned it so many times. So the truth of the matter is you have to do it. It's kind of uncomfortable, but you have to do it.
Can we prepare you for the day after the campaign closes?
Yeah,
please do.
JM, when are you going to run that Kickstarter?
That's what you're going to get those questions.
It's the day after it closes, and you go. You've been almost embarrassed for
right.
Gail Simone followed me on Twitter. I don't know if she still follows me. I hope she does, but I don't know. And 3 days later, I started a Kickstarter campaign, and all I could think is, I really wish she would have started following me 3 days after this instead of now, because now I'm just going to be that annoying guy that just talks about it. But also, I had to, you know, promote it, and
you have to
47 times a day.
There's no choice. You have to.
And you'll get that email. So Shani wrote, I put my 2 cents in on the campaign and look forward to digging into and enjoying the stories. Oh, this has been great, and it's been a pleasure to get to know both of you.
Oh, thank you so much.
We like to end on a very positive note, and I can't think of a more positive note from a better person than Shani. So David and JM.
Let's do 2 more things. Let's throw the link up so that people can see it before the end, and then. You both mentioned social media. Where can we find you on social media? What on Twitter, on Facebook?
I am on Twitter at JM DeMatteis. I'm on Facebook, Facebook/JM DeMatteis, and on Instagram JM.DeMatteis. And then there's my website jmdmatteis.com, and I'm getting tired already just mentioning all these things.
Spellboundcomics.com is the main site, and you can purchase there. It will save us a few percentage points over the Kickstarter fees, and it will all be the same price and the same fulfillment rules and all that. And then on social media, Instagram is at Spellbound Comics, plural. Twitter is singular, at Spellbound Comic, because they limit the number of characters, so that was it. And there's a Facebook group that is /Spellbound Comics, so you can just search for it.
Awesome.
Excellent. Thanks, gentlemen.
Absolute pleasure. And,
yeah, it was great. Thank you guys so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Have a great night. We're going to talk about some of the campaigns that have been on the show. And while you are live, we will be bringing up the DeMultiverse every Friday night until you close. So thank you so much. Go get either dinner, a snack, a walk, whatever you do. And I don't know where people are in the world, but it was a really pleasure to talk to you.
Thanks so much, guys. Take good care.
Thank you. You too.
Bye. So, Will, I am going to lean on you a little bit because I missed some of these, but I didn't miss Concrete Arcanum.
Mm-hmm.
It is an anthology, but I'm not going to lie. I'm blanking on the conceit of it. Do you have it in your head?
It is. Magic has kind of, metaphorically come out of the closet, and it's just there. And this anthology is about how people deal with, magic in their world.
That's right. And do we have time for The Alchemist of Aurelia? Because I know it is closing super soon.
It is
5 hours.
5 hours left. Yep. Mm-hmm.
The Alchemist of Aurelia is about an impatient wizard in training who probably should put a little more time into her studies as opposed to just going out to make spells. But luckily, her mistake spell brings a sprite into her life, and which will or will not protect her from the oncoming adventure. Melissa J. Massey writes and draws it. It's just a nice, fun, it's going to get darker fantasy adventure.
We have Our Starry Universe, which is a sci-fi fantasy comic that we had them on earlier. I think it ends October 20th, so there's still some time on it. Yeah, October 20th. It is science fiction, but it also blends some fantasy in because the main character survives a spaceship crash when her magic manifests and
kills everybody else in her crew, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, but
So
I believe there are pirates. I think there are space pirates.
Yeah, there's space pirates and magic and sci-fi. It's just a nice space opera, fun times by Andrew Barkas.
Yep.
And we are going to try to work something out with our buddy Rob Maltari. We have not been able to yet, but Nightwolf, Snowpaw, Werewolf Adventure, gory sexy time adventures. Not TNA sexy time, but it's a sexy.
It's
book
beautiful.
Too.
It's beautiful art by Mog Park. So definitely check that out.
Do we have anything we can show that Mog Park might have sent anybody while we're here?
Sure. You need to go see Mog Park because this is a metal print of her cover to Crossover Division #4, and it is absolutely gorgeous. So go check out Mog and go buy a bunch of these from her because they're awesome.
And I think we have about one day, it was 24 hours this afternoon, one day to get the second installment of Granite State Punk, which is Travis Gibbs' story about the Man of the Mountain in New Hampshire, which is a place to go visit on your travels. Although, like I said, I saw Weird Al now 48 hours ago, and I cannot get the biggest ball of twine in Minnesota out of my head. And usually when you get an earworm, it's terrible, but I have been having so much fun just shouting that out I can't believe this is the first time I've done it on the stream because it's gone through my head the entire time we've been on.
And Breaking Edge is the second issue of Granite State Punk, where they're dealing, I think, with the first witch burned at the stake. And again, Travis is a great guy, and he says this is the best work he's doing. So go check it out.
And no spell lasts forever. I heard a little bit about this. I did listen to the show last week. Thank you very much for letting me go to the Keys and visit the southernmost point. So I do appreciate it. But so what is No Spell Lasts Forever?
Well, the main character has magic, but she ends up getting killed and then makes a deal with the devil to come back, and she has to tempt a good pure soul, but then she's kind of deciding maybe that she doesn't necessarily want to do that. It's got some gorgeous art and some great writing, so definitely check it out. It is a really beautiful book, and I think it's got about 2 weeks left. Is that right?
Yes, 20 days, 3 weeks. So yeah,
3 weeks. So definitely time to check that out.
This one is the one that confused me with Concrete Arcana. I know this one. Okay, so the concept of this horror anthology is a box shows up with the answers to your problems. All you have to do is kill someone. And if you kill someone, you get the answers to your problem. You don't have to kill someone, but then you don't get the answers
to your problems.
And some other things might happen from the box. I don't know, but it sounded like such a great conceit. And I was like, oh, I actually have a story for that. But I'll read the anthology first. So maybe somebody's already done my twist.
And also last week we had our buddy.
Oh wait, so Steven, yeah.
Yeah,
Monster
Steven
Matador, I'm gonna guess.
of Monster Matador. Yep, Volume 1 is out, so definitely check out the Monster Matador. It is it's a pretty awesome series, and this collects, I think, 3 or 4 of the issues. I can't remember which, but go check it out. It's really amazing.
Matador fights kaijus, and the art in it is extraordinary.
Yep.
Now, this one is going to be pretty easy. This one is Grandma Chainsaw, and the story is
It is
about
exactly what you would expect it to be.
as long as you expect her to do the killing, it's a grandma with a chainsaw doing the killing, and
That's right.
super fun and great work. And you know, like, we'll do one little shout out to the JM DeMatteis workshops. If you want to check in and see if he's doing the workshops anymore one weekend, his website is www.jmdmateis.com/p/workshops_3.html. Literally, I Googled JM DeMatteis workshops and I found it. So it's pretty easy to find. And as we learned tonight, heck of a nice guy, really interesting to listen to. So if you want to do a workshop, I can't imagine. There are many better, and certainly most aren't going to teach you like he does.
And we haven't had these people on the show, but I've got a few other things that I'm backing right now that I'm sure you're probably backing as well, and that other people would be interested in. Is there's this little known writer. His name's Pat Shand. He's never really had much success on Kickstarter, I'm afraid. I'm joking, of course. Pat Shand is a monster on Kickstarter, and Destiny New York Volume 6 is out right now. So go check that out. And
go right
catch
now.
up.
You have like 2 hours. So if you're listening to the podcast, it's not happening. But if you're watching live, you've got to go right now for Destiny.
Go right now. Our buddy Clay Adams, who we're all jealous of all the time, has a book out right now called Dream Quest, which is a 48-page Lovecraftian horror one-shot. The art is by Mick Byers, who is an amazing artist, and
a swell guy.
And a swell guy who needs to come on the show. So
yes.
Get on that, Mick. Let's see. Two left. Sharp Wit and the Company of Women by Brent Fisher and Michelle, and I apologize, I'm not going to try to destroy her last name, but the same people that did The Color of Always. So this is another
anthology, right?
Another anthology, Sharp Wit and the Company of Women. So there you go. And finally, Moana McAdams, a friend of ours, is Journey to, I'm going to butcher it, and I apologize, Moana.
Guys, we've made it. We have
spam.
We have spam. We're a real YouTube show, guys. We have spam. So if you want to find love,
stop watching this stream.
I don't think you find love at that particular place. So if you want to know what it is, I'm not going to say it. You go to the YouTube page. I won't be able to delete it for a day or two. But we made it. We have 3 spam comments on YouTube. So
yeah. Oh, and one last campaign that I just backed yesterday, Harpy of the West, #2 by Rio Burton, which Rio is an amazing artist, and go check that out.
All right. I really appreciate it, Will. I got to run tonight, but it was fun to get back in the saddle with you.
Yeah, you bet, man. Hey, and safe travels, and we will chat soon, I'm sure.
To Shawnee, to Tate, to Facebook user who I'm going to guess was Charlie, to our spammers who are confusing porn with love. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you next week.
That's right. Thanks, everyone.